Welcome back to another episode, everybody. I'm your host, Emery Wolf. Joining me is Nick Lamb, who is my co-host, I guess. Why am I doing things weird lately?
It's just how you do it.
I guess somewhere in
your thing.
between. We're two camera guys. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, this is another
It's a
episode.
show about all things camera. That's what you usually say.
Yeah, I know. I should write it. I don't know. We haven't been doing it enough lately, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Nick,
Yeah.
busy show today. We're going to talk about a lot of things. The first thing I kind of want to go over is a few. Actually, do you know what the first thing we should go over? Why are we in StreamYard?
Well, it's free. Well, no. So we used StreamYard before. We really liked it. And then we thought we'd get OBS running. Remember those days?
Yeah. Who's this we in this situation?
OBS didn't really work. There was a few bugs in the program, the software, when we were thinking of switching over. They probably fixed those now. And then we just started recording our Zoom phone calls and posting those. But I just thought, you know what? Let's see what StreamYard has to offer again. And I logged in. They've got a free plan that we're using right now. And who knows? Maybe if they got a good Black Friday sale, we'll snap that up.
Yeah. So typically how we would do this before, my work would actually buy this and basically just piggyback that, cheat it, steal it. It was
it gives you a chance to learn the software, right? It's actually
It was good practice for me in between. And actually, StreamYard's done like a lot of little things that actually make it a lot better for stuff like this and stuff like that what we were using for at work. So it's always kind of exciting getting back in it. Although I was always driving that ship. Tonight you're driving the ship.
Yeah, I've got all the buttons here. You want a 30-second countdown? Boom. I can put that in. I won't do that.
Anyways, that's what we're on. I'm going to do a quick little news roundup, Nick. I think I've talked to you about some of this stuff, but not all of it. So the first thing I want to go through is this HDR by Barco, which is actually essentially a system that can be put into a theater for HDR theater experiences, giving you more contrast, more highlights, better details, darker darks, vivid colors, yada, yada, yada.
But is this home theater or live theater?
No, this would be like a big theater, like going to your local cinema.
You go to your movies. Okay.
So anyways, it's interesting. So like your HDR TVs, it is now coming to cinema, and this is one of the companies doing it.
Have you ever shot in HDR as far as video goes and kind of edited in HDR and messed around with any of that?
I have tried and have not had much success.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't messed around with it either. There's an HDR option on my C200, and the red has some pretty good HDR options. I've had some shoots where I've wished I would have shot in it, just to have the latitude, like when I was shooting out a window and stuff before, but no, never have.
Yeah. And for the most part too, like I'm shooting on DSLRs, whether it's here or at work, and they don't really have HDR video. You got to have something like the C400. Is that the newest one?
Yes, I believe so.
I think it's about HDR.
300, 400.
Who knows? But something in that level. It's like an $8,000 camera.
Yeah. Have you watched? So I've watched some tutorials on HDR coloring and stuff at DaVinci. Pretty cool. It's what you would expect, just more latitude. But I've never really seen the point because of how do you effectively finish on HDR, right? Well, I shouldn't say I haven't seen the point because it'll still look better not in HDR, but I've never seen an actual HDR presented production like this. So I don't know. I think that might be kind of cool.
Yeah, we'll see it. Hopefully it comes to a theater that I can actually see it and try it out on. Next up, Disney. Did you know about all of this, Nick, that there was someone suing Disney, and I think don't quote me on this, their wife got seriously injured or maybe even killed at the park. And because they agreed to the terms on Disney Plus, like 5 years ago, Disney didn't have to own up to anything on the park, which is super confusing. Feels like something that shouldn't happen. I think we did talk about it before, but now there's groups out there trying to call
Mm.
on to some action against this thing. And frankly, I feel like that would be a good thing because everybody agrees to those terms without thinking about it.
Yeah. Have you ever read your terms of agreement, like terms of service?
I have tried.
Okay. Well, so here's the other weird part is uh I heard, have you heard I've heard that ski slopes, for example, have these terms of agreement, but I've heard, this is just rumor, I know nothing about any actual law, but I've heard that it's actually false and that none of their terms of service hold up in court. Like if they're doing something that's bad, then they're doing something that's bad.
Yeah, you would think that is how it works. But you know what? The States is totally different as well, times, especially for legal things. But yeah, if you want to actually Google this thing, it's kind of a crazy story. And yeah, it seems like something that should not happen.
Yeah, it would be nice. Have you ever, like, when you buy a house, when the lawyer sits down and actually explains everything to you that you're signing?
Mhm.
That's a different type of terms of service where it's like I actually feel comfortable with what I'm signing. I'm getting it all explained to me, and then I can make an actual choice. But in terms of service to watch Netflix or just some TV, that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't seem right, does
Yeah.
it?
And what also doesn't seem right is that each individual has so many of these terms of services that they go through, whether it's social media, whether it's a streaming platform, whether it's like you said for a property or something like that. I hate everything has to be in this like legal jargon BS. And like, so you have to also be a lawyer, which also doesn't make sense. And I think doesn't make it quite fair.
No, no,
There's your
this
hot take of the day, something that could
yeah,
probably get me in trouble too. But
yeah. Hot take, terms of service are bad. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks.
all right. The next one, this one's a little friendlier. The last couple weeks, actually, there had been the once in a lifetime comet out there. I don't know if you actually went outside and seen it at all, Nick.
You know what? I, by dumb luck, saw the comet, and it was amazing.
Yeah. Did it look like this picture here we're showing you?
It looked better than that picture there.
Oh,
So
really?
I was out. You're gonna laugh. I was out glow disc golfing.
Of course.
So it's where you take glow in the dark frisbees, and then you kind of light up the hole, and you throw your discs
I love
at the
that
hole at
you
night.
are sitting here explaining glow disc golf
Yeah.
as opposed to talking about the camera things.
But so I was playing, and so the course, I started off facing the direct opposite of this comet because the comet was essentially straight west. And so you play the first half of the course kind of facing the one way, and then we turned around and we were like, what is that in the sky? And it was like, is that the International Space Station? Is that like a plane? Like it looked really cool. It was huge. It was unbelievable. This is it was the most bright comet and closest comet that I've seen, like for this sustained amount of time. It was nuts.
Yeah. I never got out to actually see it, but it looks to me kind of like that last comet that came out. I don't Neowise or something like that. I don't know how the two compare, but it does look very similar, especially in photos that I've seen that are on here. Anyways, this is just
Yeah, like
a quick
this
sampling of.
photo actually, the one that you're on right now actually does it justice. The one with not the one that one, but the one with the tower. Because that's how it looked just to your naked eye, right? Like it was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. For those who got out and got to take a picture of this, good for you, because those of us who missed, like me, won't get another chance for another 80,000 years, apparently.
Nice.
I think that's a little out of my time reach. The other thing too,
For a comet
actually,
that size.
for this specific comet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be another comet that size.
The other thing too, just actually this picture sort of brings it up, but right there, that little guy, that little streak of goodness, probably a thank you to Elon Musk there. It's a good thing he's hiding them satellites up there. 20 years ago, wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
it's actually in almost every single picture. You see the little streaks
yeah.
everywhere. Fun times, fun times. While we're talking about the sky, I thought this was interesting. So some of the hotels out in oh man, Iceland, where
Yeah.
you would go and stay to shoot photos of northern lights, they actually give you calls when the northern lights are out, so you can just
No
sit in your
way.
sit in your hotel and be sleeping there, and all of a sudden, if they come out, the hotel will give you a shout, and you jump out of bed and you go get it. Which honestly, I think that's a fantastic idea.
I love that because so we get so lucky here and see northern lights, but I've watched some YouTubers that have gone up to like Iceland or the Antarctic and hoping to see northern lights, and it's hit or miss, right? So like sometimes they don't see it at all, and
Well, I mean, it's like that here though too. Like it all depends on like the sun activity, what it's doing in that to make sure that it's sending that cosmic dust our way. But yeah, like when you get up as high north as Iceland is, you get some pretty epic northern lights. There's one picture here, but again, it is all timing and it's all based on the sun cycles and what the sun is actually doing for activity. So
yeah. So I'm sure that there's a lot of you probably have that app on your phone, but I know a lot of photographers do. There's like a I don't know what's the term for the northern lights, like the activity that the sun.
Aurora.
Yeah, but it gives you a number and
Oh,
it'll tell you how.
there's a few of them. So, like when I had started out, I thought it was the KP index was the most important thing. I
Okay,
mean,
yeah.
it's important. It's sort of the easiest one to watch. But yeah, there's sort of a few other ones too. And I honestly I don't remember the example. There is a Saskatchewan Aurora group on Facebook. If you really want to learn that stuff, go into that group, and there's people there that are more than happy to tell you.
Now, I thought this is a weird part about the Northern Lights and those numbers because I feel like every year somebody tells me that the Northern Lights are the like it's a 7.6. It's the highest it's ever been. But I feel like somebody tells me that every year.
Uh, that's a good question.
So is it getting more intense and brighter, or is it just that different people are discovering a higher number each year and it's actually not brighter?
Probably different people. It's there again. I don't know what the highest number has ever been. I don't have an idea, but honestly, like 7, 8, I think is this. I think there was even
Yeah.
like a 9 or 11 or
I thought
something
it
this
was out
year.
of 10, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, whatever the number is, anyways, it goes up. Um, Here's the thing: like hypothetically, our sun is growing. Hypothetically, there should be more coming,
Mhm.
but that's over a time scale that we can't comprehend.
Yeah, probably not in the last 5 years.
Yeah, but what we can comprehend is the sun actually goes through, uh, give or take, an 11-year cycle. Again, if you don't believe me, Google this stuff. And we are at the height of that 11-year cycle. So we're kind of, year 1 to 5, it grows where the sun has a lot of activity and starts kicking a lot of seismic dust our way, seismic, cosmic dust.
Yeah.
Um, and every time
I'm not gonna
those
fact
sun
check it, don't worry.
flares, yeah, every time those sun flares come out and stuff like that, that's when we'll see these things, right? So that's how you watch that, and you usually only get a couple days notice on it, really. um but anyways, we're in that middle of that 11, which should be the peak. And so we
Oh, nice.
should, after we have this peak, it should start going down. We'll get less and less and less, and then it'll build back up again, and it keeps
Yeah.
going through this 11-year cycle of more and less and more and less. And more too means more bursts, which are more activity, more northern lights more often. And more also means higher intensities. But that also doesn't mean anything. Like we could at the low point see one of the biggest bursts the sun ever has and get the most brightest northern lights we've ever had, or that we've seen.
Yeah.
Although I think I'm going to start saying that just to bug you. It's always the most we've ever had.
Yeah, I know. You'll message me. All right, it's at a 7.8. That's the most I've ever seen.
Yeah. Some more photos to look at here. These are some winning wildlife images throughout, I believe it's Canada. So something curated by the CBC here, I think. I'm not too sure where it was. I didn't read it closely, but definitely some amazing photos on this. That one's great. The bison and the bird. Real close up of a hummingbird. I've actually tried this shot and have failed horribly. So kudos to Alec Hickman, who took this shot. Yeah, some really good stuff. And again, it's all Canadian content. So there's a lot of people out there in Canada doing some really great stuff.
Wow. I love mountain goat photos. I don't know what it is, but they just amaze me because it's like, one, how is the mountain goat standing where it's standing half the time when you see it? And then two, how did the person get up there to
Yeah.
take this picture? Like, unless that's a drone, what's going on here, right?
Yeah, actually, it could be a drone. I never even thought of that, but yeah. Do you know what, too? Just because we're in it, I'm gonna name some names here. So Sonny Parker out there, he took that shot there. He or she, Calvin Aiken as well. Good work. Alec Hickman, I already mentioned. Antonio Hugh or Who, not too sure how to pronounce it, and Ryan Wilkes are all on here. So good work.
These are all stunning images.
Yeah.
The hummingbird one, I feel like hummingbird, you would just set up your tripod, right? Wouldn't you? And then you would remote start it from somewhere else. Isn't that how you get a hummingbird photo like that? Like, you wouldn't be doing it handheld.
I don't know.
Maybe we'll have to get that person on
good
here and ask them.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what I've been looking forward to.
I put it in here because I knew you'd like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the most camera related thing we'll talk about all night. Are we living in the golden age of apples?
Oh. Yeah, without a doubt. They're almost too good right now. Like, so if you haven't tried any of these exotic apples, like what I would recommend to everybody is just go to your grocery store and grab one of every apple that they have and just taste the difference, because they do taste different. And
they crunch different.
The crunch. So like what I'm looking for in an apple is one that snaps like a good piece of celery. You know, like when celery snaps? That's what I want in my apple, is like this good snap. And then it can't be too mushy though. Have you ever had a mushy apple?
I've had like a soft apple. Like,
there's
I
nothing
wouldn't call it
worse.
mushy, but soft.
Yeah. So I call them crapples. So if you get a crapple, it's like the mushy apple. But yeah, if you get something that snaps, unbelievable.
Yeah. So this little article goes through apple history, how it's been changing, how they've been breeding apples, and basically, funny enough, it's before the Honeycrisp and after the Honeycrisp apple.
That's what they're talking about there.
Yeah. So that little golden bear changed everything.
Yeah. Well, the Honeycrisp is awesome.
You totally did not catch my joke, but that's okay.
No, sorry, I missed it. I was looking up something else on my screen.
Honeycrisp cereal bear.
Oh,
I said he changed everything.
Have you ever had the Sweet Tango, which is rated the #1 apple in the world by theapplist.com?
I don't know if I have.
Yeah. So the Sweet Tango is amazing. But the Honeycrisp is actually the #2 apple in the world, according to the Applist. So if you can't get your hands on a Sweet Tango, just go try a Honeycrisp.
Actually, another thing too to point out about apples, a lot of these apples are grown in BC too. So like where they change these things and what they're doing. So like, was Honeycrisp invented in BC or created?
It might have been. Let's see. So I think that the Honeycrisp is actually related to the Sweet Tango. But they did the Sweet Tango off of the Honeycrisp. Yeah. So this is like the original amazing apple, and then we're doing a lot of stuff off of the Honeycrisp right now is what's happening.
Okay. So that's
But
probably
it's
why before and
still
after.
rating supreme, basically, according to the Apple list. So none of the new apples have knocked it off yet. But so the tricky part is to get some of these new apples is quite tricky. But that's why I say get all of them. So buy all of them. Buy the, get the Granny Smith, get the Red Delicious, grab all of them. And then once you compare the Honeycrisp to one of those, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
What's the one I like? Is it a Gala? I feel like it's not
Gala.
a Gala. What's the
Yeah,
one?
so the Gala's in the top 10. Gala's actually number 10 with the apple list. The Gala's a good apple.
It's a good apple. There,
Yeah,
you heard it here, folks. It is a good apple.
but then again, I actually like the Granny Smith, the old-fashioned green apple. And the applist wouldn't agree with me there. So I don't know. To each their own apples, right?
To each their own apples. Well played. All right. Nick, this podcast, our main course tonight, what we were going to talk about, you and I, we've been reading these books. We've been listening to books on audiobooks and going through some things. You came up with this idea. You're going to take the first book on the list that I've read that you have not read.
The number one
we're
book.
going to talk about it. So that number one book on my list, you can see it right there, The Storyteller, Tales and Life of Music by Dave Grohl. So yeah.
Should we get you apparently informed me of an elephant in the room right now with this book. Do we need to talk about that or just skip it?
Nah, we can talk about it. It sort of, if you don't know, Dave Grohl has kind of been a hero of mine. I love his music. I love everything he's done, his work wise. However, Dave Grohl does have a history of cheating on his significant others, which he just recently got found out. That, how do you even say that? Got found out anyways. And he's having another kid with another lady currently. So he's going through some troubles. But here's the thing. I said Dave Grohl was a hero. I think it's one of those things where, everybody has faults. Everybody has issues, problems, whatever. If you're going to idolize someone or make them your hero for the things that they do that are good, not for the things that they do that are not good. So if Dave can still be my hero, he's made some questionable life choices. That's okay, but I still respect his music.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's actually good advice, because it's like, you want to learn how to be a good dad, probably find somebody that's a good dad. Want to learn how to play the drums and write some sweet songs, then that's a good person to look up to for that.
Here's the other thing, going back to you want to, there's been social media people who, prided themselves on the family things, and then they've been caught cheating as well. And so you also need to be willing to be like, I stuck my worth in this person and now they're not worth it. And, you can change your ways as well. They don't have to be your hero forever, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The other, now this probably doesn't fall under that, what I'm about to say, but I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, hey, is somebody allowed to have a bad day?
Well,
so this doesn't fall under that, but I mean, as far as cancel stuff goes.
Yes and no, right? You got to think here. I think we're a year, maybe a little over a year of one of his best friends passing, with Taylor Hawkins dying, his drummer of his band, the guy he hung out with, for the last 20 years or however long it's been. I'm sure he was going through some stuff with that as well. Again, not condoning his actions, but these are the things that sort of lead to it. So it's not one day he had that was bad. It was probably a bunch of days. And yeah, he is human.
Mm-hmm. But so yeah, you had it ranked as your number one book, and
Do I really?
another
I do.
mutual friend had actually gave me the physical book, and I was not necessarily super pumped to read it.
Do you know what? I did not notice that bookshelf puts all these things into rankings like that, or it's putting my highest ranked book top. I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Anyways, why weren't you pumped to read it?
Well, so I like so Nirvana came out when I was in elementary or high school, younger anyways. Yeah, elementary, I think. Yeah, for sure elementary. And then I don't know, I kind of got sick of the music. Like I feel like I've heard it too much. And then I listened to Foo Fighters album, like maybe their first or second album, but never really followed Dave Grohl at all. So I feel like I'm definitely not who this book was for.
And so now that you've read it, are you
So this book was actually like, spoiler alert, this was a really good book. Um right away. So most books that I read, they tend to be like, look how great I am. And I did not get that feeling from this book at all. This book was filled with, it was like, this guy was, at least it came across in the book as somebody that was so appreciative of the opportunity they had, the opportunity to get to meet all of these famous people. Even the way that Nirvana formed was, it felt like it was total dumb luck, and he was saying, like, he presented it in a way that was total dumb luck, because he was in another band at the time, and I think it was their bassist had flew back home and basically left them stranded, and so they weren't really getting any gigs, and he was just like living on this person's couch, and he heard that this band in Seattle needed a drummer, and then phoned him up, like literally just phoned them up, and they chatted for like 30 minutes, an hour, and they were going with somebody else, and then they called him back. Did they call him back, or else he called again? I think they called him back, and they were like, yeah, actually, our conversation went pretty good. We wouldn't mind you coming up here after all. And then he just went and like chilled with them and became their drummer, which, yeah, it's kind of unbelievable.
okay? I'm gonna preface this too a little bit here. It's been a while since I've actually listened to the book, so I don't really remember much about it, but I do remember enjoying it. It's something I'm gonna listen to again. But I wanted to read your review on this.
I don't even remember
So
what I wrote.
this is
Probably
Nick's
bad.
review. I heard this was a good book, and it lived up to the hype. Dave's passion for music and appreciation for the life he loves really comes across.
I think life he lives.
Lives. Well, I
Spelling
can't
error
read.
there on my part.
Oh, life he loves. Yeah. It's okay. Here's my review. It's just as equally as short, even though I gave it a high rating. This is a great book. Dave is a hero of mine. We've discussed that. And he seems like a genuinely nice guy. Might want to take that one back a little bit sometimes. The book validates that, as well as his strong work ethic without letting things get away from you too much. Mixed with life lessons on things as simple as being yourself, Dave is an inspiration to many.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we both thought highly of the book. We both rated it quite highly as well. So was there something specific you took away from that book? When you initially pitched this idea to me, it was like, how can this book teach us about creativity?
So the part that I took away was, so especially when we worked on movies, we would meet a ton of quote unquote famous people, right? And the part that I was always kind of taught, and that what I lived by, was, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't, if you got a DVD or whatever, kind of keep it at home. Don't bother bringing it down to get it signed, because Even if they're a big hero, like kind of play it really cool and don't let any of that kind of get in the way between you and your job. Would that be equivalent to how you kind of were
I don't
brought up in
know.
the film industry?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything we actually talked about. It was just something, and honestly, too, I didn't think it was that great or that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, but after reading this book, he kind of had not the opposite, but like, holy crap, I get to meet these people, and it's kind of I need to consider how, like, not that I'm better than anybody else, but it's like this is a really fortunate thing, and this is cool because I love, in his case he loved music, but like in my case, I love film and cinema and actors and even like cinematographers and stuff. And the fact that I'm kind of working on the same movie that they are on, that's kind of cool. And he wasn't afraid to say it. And, looking back, I don't know. I don't know if I would have did anything different, but if I had the chance now, it would be, I think that it's almost like giving permission to tell the person, hey, you're a big influence on me, and appreciate all the work you've done.
Actually, just with that, who were your influences?
Um, on for movies or for music, or which
For
are we
movies,
talking about?
life,
Oh,
even. Nick, who are your influence? Who are Nick
that's
Lamb's biggest influences?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that and come back. Mine are so boring because mine are all like my mom, my dad, my like youth group leader, like all that kind of stuff. So mine are fairly boring, and like I've got some friends that I would consider kind of people that I would I would look up to and stuff. Like, yeah, mine are pretty boring. I don't have any real famous ones because a lot of that I don't know. Like there's famous people that I would think do amazing stuff that I can't do in the video space and film space, but those wouldn't be uh you would it wouldn't blow your mind. You'd be like, "Oh wow, you think Peter McKinnon does cool stuff? Great." Like that kind of stuff.
Great.
Wow.
Wow.
What a shocker.
Uh, it is kind of
um,
true, though. I think like the people you deal with in your everyday life are sort of the ones I think who leave that lasting impression with you for the most part. But I would argue, the people Dave Grohl meets in his everyday life are, I guess, more famous than the rest of us. And is that really exciting at the end of the day? I don't know. It's probably just as boring as, your mom being an inspiration. And actually, for
yeah.
that matter, too, when you read the book, like how much was Dave Grohl's mom his inspiration, right?
Yeah. Yeah, his mom was in the book a lot, and didn't think too highly of his dad, that's for sure. But so the other parts, I did not know much of the Nirvana story, and I thought that was really cool when he touched on that in the book, and how Kurt Cobain was just basically like, not like they didn't go back forever, but when he moved to Seattle, he lived with at Kurt's apartment, slept on his couch. And he knew Kurt as this kind of fairly shy, like artsy guy that smoked a lot of cigarettes, right? Um, he did get into the heroin, which is interesting. Do you remember that part?
A little bit. Yep.
Where, because in his mind, and he'd actually, um, kind of, there was a part in the book where he foreshadowed heroin use. Like he talked about these junkies or whatever, and that they got chased by these junkies in this band, and almost beat up, but they had to run away or whatever. Do you remember any of that?
A little bit. Yep.
So he essentially foreshadowed his experience with heroin prior to meeting Kurt as these crazy junkies that were trying to beat him up after a gig. To suddenly he met like moving to Seattle where heroin was a thing, and all of a sudden his close friend and bandmate is using it, and it was a mix between like worry for Kurt, worry for the band, worry for the music, worry that none of this life and success that they were suddenly experiencing was going to happen anymore. Yeah, so that I found that part really interesting.
What would be your take on drugs and creativity?
According to this book,
Do you know what? In general, like I feel like honestly, the drug stuff with Dave, I don't think was like it wasn't anything. It wasn't like Motley Crue or anything like that. But
yeah,
it
he
was just
doesn't
sort of
play up the
something.
drugs at
Yeah, it was
all.
just sort
Like
of something that was there. He partook once in a while, and then he actually it sounds like he's not doesn't do them at all
it didn't
anymore.
sound like drugs other than maybe marijuana was at all in his life.
Yeah, but I like I said, I kind of want more of the general thing, drugs and creativity. It's actually for an example, just a story going into year 2 of film school. This was like one of the things that kind of annoyed me about film school, but it was year 1, but trying to go into year 2. You took an experimental class, and our profs instructions to us was basically it's Christmas break, go out and get high and you'll come up with your experimental film project. I was like, that sounds like such a fucking cop out. Like I was so mad about it. I was just like, that's so
Really?
stupid. And then the craziest thing happened. And so I feel like this is better than getting high. What you do is you deprive yourself of sleep and you make long road trips late at night to exhaust yourself playing hockey, and then you drive back, and the only thing to console you is dance music in the car, and you get this dance music going that's just this constant beat, and then you get these cars driving by with their headlights at that same constant beat, and lo and behold you come up with your your experimental film project.
Yeah, it's about frat boys with their driving with their brights on.
But what I actually did was I tried to do some like Pavlov's dog experiments. So thinking sort of science and all this repetition, what does it do? Am I actually seeing these lights coming at me on the highway, or are they just fake because I'm imagining them with the beat, right?
Oh, I like that.
So that's kind of what my experimental film was about. It was probably the most bizarre and craziest experimental film in that class. It was just so stupid. Um, but yeah, that came off of doing
That's
drugs, and I've never done drugs.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like you and me are the worst people to answer this because I've never done drugs either. So I don't really know what the connection is between any of this, but um, there must be some connection. Like I don't know if I can completely deny that there's any connection between drugs and creativity with things, but um I don't know. I'm curious. I wonder if it is necessary for some people. I don't know, or if they just think it's necessary.
Yeah, I almost feel like specifically, I was going to say rock and roll, but like when you think of guys like Chris Farley who've died as well, but um, I don't know if they're using the drugs maybe to cope with other issues and it's not actually dealing with creativity.
I think so. Yeah, because I don't know if Chris Farley was always on drugs. I'm guessing he wasn't
Yeah.
always on drugs.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
that's more of the larger than life thing. So Dave did mention in his book about how it seems like there's some people that are never like it's just never enough. So it's like, okay, I'm having a beer, but then I want 10 beer, and then I want somebody has these pills and they take these pills. And then he did mention that like Kurt was one of those kind of guys that something was there, he was just going to try it, and that was just his personality type.
Yeah. I would also argue, like, going, if you listen to my story again, it's more the argument that, drugs are not necessary for creativity. There's definitely some other things. I think it's actually over time too, you build it. It's like practice, it's like a habit, it's like physical exercise.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I always find it interesting that all these big stars, maybe they just do it because they got money and nothing better to do. I don't know.
There might be something with that. Yeah. The Are you a Foo Fighter fan?
A big Foo Fighter fan.
Okay, you're a big Foo Fighter fan. So I'd always heard, just as a like after when Kurt Cobain died, when I was in elementary school or whatever, or high school, whenever the Foo Fighters started, the story that I'd always heard was, oh, Dave Grohl had these songs, but Nirvana didn't let him play any of these songs, and didn't want to have any part of it, and just wanted him to go and play the drums. But according to his book, that wasn't the story at all. Like, it doesn't sound like he shared any of these songs with Nirvana. They might not have even known that he was a guitar player, for all it sounded like in the book.
Yeah,
But
I think that is the reality of the situation. How Dave puts it, I believe, and how he's always sort of put it, is like he was embarrassed of the songs he had. He did have, I'm not sure how many songs, but it sounded like a handful of songs before Nirvana actually fell apart. And yeah, he was too afraid to take it to Nirvana, so they never ever knew until he actually didn't even want to record them because he just
wow.
he didn't know how it was going to come out. If you ever listen to the first album compared to the second album, like, it's a massive difference. And the second album's when he's like finally sort of tried to finalize that band. He doesn't quite have everybody there yet, but like the second album compared to the first are almost two different bands, and in a good way. The second album, The Color and the Shape, is probably one of my favorite albums of all time.
Because yeah, in the first album, he was the whole band, right? He was recording all of the
Yeah, I think,
instruments, all the tracks.
was it in the book too where he taught, I know I've heard him talk about it, but like where he'd record the drum track, and then you go back in, you'd play the drum track, and he would record the guitar track over top of it, and then do his vocals, and then add the bass,
Yeah.
and however his process would, like, just that process alone, like, holy smokes.
Well, because he didn't have enough money at the time. And so he had to practice up all these songs, and he had the studio space only rented for like 5 or 6 days. And so he was only doing one take essentially of each part. Like, he would play the drums, and then he would play the guitar and the bass, and then sing over it, and would do that for all of his tracks, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to ask you, when you edit, do you know everything in that time frame from
no,
start to front, or you're kind of like making your way and making things work as you go, right?
yeah, for the most part,
So
for
imagine
sure.
if you would know everything in between point A and B, and you would hit it on a rhythm and get it all together
On
perfectly, and then go back to replay it to play the next part that goes perfectly on top of it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually mind-boggling.
yeah. Now I've been. This was years ago, but in college, I did take some recording classes, like where studio recording classes, where you would mic up the drums and you would record the drums and the guitar, and so yeah. But so him playing every single instrument and only doing one take of everything is absurd.
Yeah.
Absolutely absurd.
Even too, if he's like patching it up in editing or something, like, just to get it to that point is absurd.
Yeah.
So,
It,
pretty incredible talent to be doing that. And that's honestly sort of the thing. Again, when I talk about him being a hero, that's the reason why, is because that amount of work, it's just
yeah.
impressive that anybody can do it. I'm also not the most musically inclined, so maybe it's easier than I think. But did you ever play a
So
musical instrument, Nick?
Yeah, I played guitar.
Okay.
I can fake my way through piano. I'm not a piano player, but I could make you think I am one for 5 minutes.
All right.
But I can still play guitar.
Yeah.
Not the best anymore because I don't practice very much. But
What about like the relation to music and film or video?
so that's actually an interesting question. I consider so guitar. I use a lot of I can draw a lot of analogies of guitar, not to the artistic side, but to the technical side. In a ways it's a lot like operating a camera where it's okay, if I can zoom in and carry the subject in focus here, it's similar kind of hand eye or brain hand, or it's a coordination thing that's tying two things together. And in hockey especially, so live sports, that move of taking the puck from the blue line to the net, that's like similar muscle memory as okay, I got my A chord here and you got your C chord and you're like you just develop that muscle memory
Yeah.
similar to that. But the artistic side, I think I don't I would draw more of a photography. I would think that every cinematographer's first love's got to be photography. Well, it doesn't gotta be, but I don't think you need to be a musician by any means to appreciate cinematography. That to me, those feel like that you can. It's almost a separate world, but they go together nice. Music can definitely add to the cinema, but yeah, I don't know. I would put you love music more than I do, for sure, even though I can play a bit. But to me, I love watching a well lit scene from a movie or TV show. That I would put that experience above music for me for the most part.
Does reading this book or hearing how Dave talk about music make you feel like maybe music's a little more important?
More important, well, meaningful, I would say,
Okay.
because how the way he talks about all of these bands and his passion for all of these different bands and the style of music, it makes me think that there's a reason why that's definitely part of the reason why he was so successful. And I imagine that there's a lot of kind of video people and cinematographers that are 100 times more successful than us because they would have that same passion that he has for all of these different cinematographers and styles. And I feel like that's the biggest prerequisite to doing good is his appreciation of everybody else's work and how they got there and why and just the sound. And he was also into the scene, which was kind of cool. Like he was really into that grunge counterculture. Like,
I I feel like that's basically the mirror of what you do though as well, right? Like you're into the cinematography scene. That's sort of what I'm getting at here is maybe not on the same scale that Dave is doing it, but I think people who get into it, um, actually, here's a better way of putting it. Lisa, who's on our Pat's crew,
mhm,
started listening to some of our stuff, and we had this one episode about like, are we even camera guys? And
yeah.
Lisa had asked, like, am I a camera guy
Mhm.
person? And we kind of had the same theoretical thought about it and what like makes you one. And I think that theory and those steps that you're talking about or Dave is talking about is actually those things. That's what makes Dave a music guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's interesting. There was an interesting part in the book when Nirvana started to get famous and it was no longer just that kind of countercultural movement. The uh, like people that he would have been literally beaten up at by in school, like the jocks and the sports guys. Like everybody started getting into them, and they didn't know what to do at first. It was an interesting part of the book where they had to kind of come to terms that these people that they essentially they wouldn't have got along with, they had to decide whether they're going to kind of welcome them in or kind of leave them out. Yeah, it was interesting.
Do you feel like you've had to go through that as a camera guy? Like back when you were doing radio shows with Myers and that, and people are like, "Man, Nick's such a nerd." Like, are those people talking to you now? Because they're like, "Oh, this is a useful skill."
So when me and Myers first did the radio show, yeah, that's interesting. Um, you know what's interesting to I don't know if you would have dealt with this as much, but I think I probably cared more what people thought a lot more than you did when I was younger. And I think that would have s- skewed reality for me because I would have been listening to the one person that makes the weird comments and think that everybody's thinking that. But I don't know. It feels like the older I get, that those comments that are very mean and dismissive, it's really only one or two people, and the majority of people are like, "Oh, cool, that's awesome."
It's just mostly me on the Pat's crew now.
Yeah, that's really just you were that person.
I guess kind of the point that I'm trying to get to as well is just like how Dave basically just seems like everyday average guys like you or I who just has a passion for these things and wants to do it, is just excited to be a part of it. And that's sort of the code he went by. Just the only thing that happened to him is his scale of things. We'll also say like Dave has a lot more talent than me, going back to the whole recording everything by yourself thing. But like just his scale is so much higher than ours. But still it's the same thing, just at a different scale.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Actually, I watched a few old Nirvana, like Kurt Cobain interviews, and there is an interview of him saying, things are really progressing at a crazy level for Nirvana. We now have Dave Grohl, the best drummer in the world, in the group, and the stuff we're doing is just insane now. That was basically the summary of the interview. So they obviously thought pretty highly of him. It wasn't just this guy that they thought was cool to hang out with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how he made it sound in the book.
In your opinion, who is the best drummer in the world?
I have no idea. Who is you got to tell me, because I have no clue.
Honestly, what's his name? Danny Carey from Tool. Unreal.
That's your favorite drummer? Do you have like a top 5 drummers, or do you know do you not? Yeah. I don't have, if you ask me my favorite, like, I just don't know. But I would be embarrassing because I'd be, I don't know, the guy that plays on the Ed Sheeran album. Like, like I have no idea.
Danny Carey, if you ever get a chance, Nick, watch there's like videos out there, like a drumming instructor breaks down Danny Carey music, and like they're just like, holy crap, what is this guy doing? Drumeo is a great YouTube channel. They're the ones that did the stuff. Like, I know they had Chad Smith here in 30 seconds to Mars, 30 minutes to Mars, whatever it is, where he is literally listening to a drumless track, and Chad Smith, he's the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, just starts like going along with it, and he almost plays the song identical to how it was played. And that was his first time hearing the song, first time listening to it, first time actually playing it, and he just did it. Like, it's incredible. And anyways, yeah, top 5 drummers for me, I don't know, kind of tough. I don't think I have like necessarily top 5. I know Danny Carey's always impressive. The drummer from Blink 182, I'm blanking on his name right now. He's pretty good as far as like a punk drummer goes. Whenever I hear a Blink song, there's always something sort of crazy going on in the drums. I just listened to Adam's song the other day, and he does this like, I think they call it a crash, not a crash, splash symbol.
Hmm.
And he does this like double splash all the time in it. And it's like, who would have put that in there? I don't know who would have done that.
Do you want to hear a funny part from the book?
Yeah.
With drumming? You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that one of the drummers quit because Dave had to re-record his drums for one of the albums.
Yep. Well, they sort of, the term they would use now is that they like quiet fired him.
Oh, so he might have actually been fired. But yeah, in the book, he said quit because he had to re-record.
Well, I think Dave just re-recorded it or something, and then like never really told the guy that he was out of the band. Just stopped like calling him.
Okay, yeah, that's a different story than was told in the book. That's for sure.
I think that's how it went, wasn't it?
Well, in the book, it sounded like so they'd recorded the album and then they did the drum track, but then the drum track wasn't exactly up to standards. So then Dave had to play the drums on the album. And then it sounded like the person took it personally and quit.
Yeah, maybe. It would make sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, how do you like get upset that Dave Grohl redid your drums?
Yeah, I know. I was kind of thinking the same thing. It would be like if we're doing a hockey game and you were like, hey, camera 4, I'm gonna do some camera 4 shots for this game because it's going to TSN or whatever. But then you can go back to camera 4 after when it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
You know, the person would be like,
analogy.
it's Emery doing 4, whatever, it's fine. I'll still have my job after. But yeah, the person, obviously they didn't want the job that bad, I guess. Or I guess personal pride would come into it too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, Dave Grohl probably doesn't even make the top 5 drummers in my mind, but he's, as a musician, as someone who's left an impact on me, he is top like 1 or 2.
Interesting.
So, my favorite parts of the book, Nick. This is really funny, and they're only my favorite because they are the things that I can remember the most vividly right here, right now. The very start of the book, he tells this story about being in this room with all these other rock musicians, and there's this like one older rock musician with bleached blonde hair and all trying to look like a pop princess, essentially, is what he's trying to do. And so people like him and think he's useful and full of energy. And Dave basically just comes to the conclusion like, oh, and then there's another one in there who sounded like Keith Richards, just grizzled, gray hair, not shaved, half a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And Dave was like, that guy is cooler. That's the guy I want to be. Mm-hmm. So he sort of decides that early on. And then at the end of the book, he kind of comes full circle and he sort of starts talking about being true to yourself. And, if you really do believe into something, stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use that as a jumping point too with what we do and social media and all these things. Because I think it was a good point on essentially creativity. I'll call it creativity. But like, if you're out there and you make videos about knitting and you're putting them up on YouTube and you're not getting views or whatever, you know what? Don't worry about that. Stick with it. Keep doing it. Do you know what? Maybe I should have been like, if you're out there doing a podcast on YouTube about camera stuff and no one is watching, just stick with it. Eventually you're going to find your way. Things are going to start clicking for you. I actually read another article somewhere. It might have been in another book. I don't remember where it was exactly, but it basically talked about like the YouTube algorithm specifically, and talking about how like, look, it's not necessarily that your content's bad. It's not that it's these things, it's that the algorithm hasn't found the way to get your content to the people who want it the most and who will be your loyal fans. So it might not even be you, it could just be the algorithm, and you just need to give it some time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And so for example, with us here, um the whole goal of this is to just literally talk about camera stuff with each
Okay.
other. Like
I was like, we have a goal.
it's not to amass a giant audience. The side effect of this is it has undoubtedly improved our public speaking. I don't know if you've noticed, like, have you given any presentations or spoken in front of people? Has it made a difference in your life for that?
Yeah, I think it absolutely makes me more comfortable with it. The only thing I would say that it doesn't make me more comfortable with is like when you do give a presentation, usually there's more people in the room. So you're kind of a little more amped up about that. But once you get over it, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it way easier to speak in front of people now and to give those presentations and stuff. Huge help. So, even that on the other side. So it's like, yeah, we get to talk about camera stuff. It helps in other parts of our lives. It's kind of fun. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of pluses to it. And the other part is we share it. And if other people find it fun and useful, then great.
Yeah. Is there anything else from the book that you wanted to touch on, Nick?
I think we probably gone pretty long. Let's see. I made a few notes here. Was there anything else that counts out that we should go to? Oh, I'm a little bit worried about his liver.
Oh, yeah. He drinks a lot. He
He
definitely does
drinks a
that.
lot and he's not shying away from it. So I like that he's being honest about that. But
But that's also what keeps him from doing drugs too, I think, probably, right?
it
Alcohol is his drug.
could be. No, yeah, because when he said that his pre-show routine was a couple of beers and then 2 shots before he goes on stage, I was just kind of doing the math and going, that's 4 drinks minimum every show. And then he's going to have a few more drinks after every show. So that would be a 6. I'd say between 6 and 10 drinks every show. So that'll add up.
That'll add up. Yeah, it's a
I don't
lot.
know. I was a little bit worried.
I think it's kind of part of that like rock and roll lifestyle too, right? Like,
I think so. I think because how old is he now?
that's a good question. I don't even know how old he is.
So here, I'm just gonna look up how old he is right now. So he's 55 years old. He didn't say it in the book, but I feel like if he lived till 65, he'd be more than happy.
Yeah. I mean, if you live a good life, you live a good life.
Yeah. So I can't see him changing his lifestyle too much now. Because when there was a pretty fun part where he thought he was having a heart attack, but it turns out he was just drinking like 4 or 5 pots of coffee a day, which it's like over 20 cups of coffee a day. And then he was like, then I had to tone down the coffee. And then literally in the next chapter, he was like, so I went out for coffee with this, it was like,
yeah. I'm gonna move on to some other books here before we wrap it up, Nick.
yeah, we should
just
start wrapping
sort
things
of
up pretty quick.
along the same lines. If you're looking for like a book about creativity, how to be creative, I listened to a book by Rick Rubin, so famous music producer Rick Rubin. I actually he's probably produced a Foo Fighters album or two. Don't know that for sure, but anyways, the creative act, the way of being. This whole book was basically like short clips of how to like, if you're in a block, what do you do? And
Mm.
try doing this and try doing that and try doing this. So a lot of things like that, or think of it this way and think of it this way, which is like, I can definitely see now Rick Rubin's, he's pretty like hippie-ish of a dude, you know, he's like the dude abides. And but I can definitely see like how some of his advice would show up there and be kind of helpful if you want to look for
That
creativity.
sounds interesting. So it's basically there's a lot of things if you're in a rut creatively, kind of how to get out of it.
Yeah, or even too, like if you just want to think like, man, I've been doing the same thing over and over. How can, you know, how should I be thinking about this? How can I change it? What can I do differently? I can,
I'm gonna add
yeah,
that to my list. That sounds great.
yeah, right. It's like having Rick Rubin in the room with you while you're doing it. So, and I can definitely see how that would have helped musicians out. Another book I'm reading right now, whoops, kind of mess this up anyways. Bill Bryson. It is a short history of nearly everything. This is like I'm going to call it a hardcore science book. I'm sure a science person would laugh at me for that, but it's a really well researched science book. And it's basically just started out from, you know, how do we know the Big Bang happened? How do we know all these things? And mostly by the end of each chapter, you get to like, well, we've only discovered this in the last 100 years, and we don't really know is the answer to most things.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is our current science on stuff. But uh, it's super fascinating. It's even got a 4.5 rating on here. So out of 16,000. So that's pretty good. It is a fat book. It is a thick book. It is a thick read. It's hard to read sometimes, but there's some really good stuff in there. Like he explains the theory of relativity in like a paragraph, which is like the best I've ever heard of that because I didn't understand the theory of relativity. Most people think it's E equals MC squared, and that's not actually true. That was for something else. Anyways, yeah, it's pretty good.
Could you sum up the theory of relativity for me,
Oh
or
God,
is it just there and then it was gone?
I will grab you the book sometime, and I'll go back and find where it is and read it to
Okay.
you. But yeah, it's and actually, it wasn't even his summary; it was some other scientist. He's like, this guy explained it the best, and he wrote it in there. So yeah, it's good. I find it fascinating, and again, when you're looking, I think you always need breaks from creativity, and you know, I think science is a good avenue for that because some things in science are actually pretty creative, even though it's science and it's like a totally different field. It's like the opposite field.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I like it.
You got a new book you're reading you're happy with.
Well, it's interesting. It's so different from what I would normally read because my normal reads.
Isn't it a finance book?
Well, so I've read a lot of finance books, but I've tend to read the uh like so my basic financial philosophy is more like the tortoise and the hare, be the tortoise, just be consistent, be slow over long periods of time, things will work out over the long haul. But the one that I'm reading right now, yeah, that's actually it. It's the Millionaire Fastlane. So I can't really vouch for the entire book yet because I'm only on like maybe the fourth or fifth chapter. But this guy makes an interesting uh, theory where he's saying so I really like how he says, okay, so we will judge a lot of stuff by the result, right? So this person made a record hit that sold 1 million records, or this person has this business that's making $1 million a year. That's unbelievable. I can't believe the locker fortune. But he breaks it down to the steps and the process that gets to that result. And then he breaks down the steps in the process to work. And so I don't know. I think I know where he's going with the end. And he breaks down the steps that'll be if you are a regular person that's just living paycheck to paycheck. Where's that going to get you? If you're a person that's doing what essentially I would advocate for, like the slow and steady, the tortoise. Where does that end up? And but he's essentially, I'm pretty sure he's going to be advocating for develop a process that makes you money quicker. So like a business, or so he'd made his money off of websites where he had essentially made this limousine website that he'd get limousine companies to pay to be referred on the website or something. I'm guessing that's how something similar to that, but different from just working a regular 9 to 5 job. It was interesting. I don't know. It's different from what I would normally want to read, but I just thought, let's just expand my my influences and read something that I wouldn't normally read. And it's turning out surprisingly well so far.
I'm going to add to this one here too, because while you were talking about it, kind of made me think of this, but Cal Newport's newest book, Slow Productivity. I should call it it's his latest book, I guess. Anyways, it's there's the core principles: do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality. It sort of sounds like it's probably along that lines. So probably a similar line of thought, just not with money involved.
Yeah. And his is, I don't know. I want to finish the book before I talk too much about it, but it was just because I've been reading a lot lately. I just wanted to make sure that I was reading from a few different viewpoints just to kind of get a bigger picture of things. And it's working out so far so good. We'll see. I was expecting it to be the usual kind of like, oh, I've got this system, buy my course, all that kind of stuff, but it hasn't been, and it's kind of shocking so far. I'm still expecting him to pull the rug out at the end of the book and offer this 6-week course for $3,000 or something silly. But
yeah, cool. When we post this, we'll put it in the links, but if you want to follow along with us, we're posting all our books to it's bookshelf.so. You can add your own there. I'm /MRE Black Ice, and Nick is /Knickers19. But again, we'll post links to that as well. You can follow us. You can see what we're reading, see what's going through our heads at stuff. We actually have a book club at work too, so some of mine get pretty detailed at times.
Ooh, that's why yours is so detailed at times, because you're prepping for book club.
I even have like some actual like, I think this is an actual thought of like something I could do at work, right?
Yeah.
And this is specific. Kieran, can we do this? So Kieran, if you're listening, you're not, but this note's for you.
I love it.
Yeah. So again, follow along. And honestly, make your own bookshelf. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a nice way to organize it. It's pretty simple. It's free.
Yeah, I like it. It's really cool.
Nick likes it because it's free.
Yes. I was just gonna use a Google Doc, but since this is out there, it looks neat.
Yeah. Do you know, there's like other services like this too that I think are like better. There's one that's like connected to Amazon, but I forget what it's called. So it actually go like through your purchases and stuff. But anyways,
guess how many books I purchased? You'll be shocked at this.
0.
Yeah, all through the library. I've got Libby and Hoopla. They're great.
Yeah. I thought
about getting Audible though.
Actually, that's a good point too. I use Libby for my audiobooks as well, so I'm doing it through the library. And then I've honestly, most of these books are like I bought these things years ago and I just never read them. I actually have one book and I've been ironically procrastinating on it like mad, but it's like our documentary textbook from Film 200. Still haven't read it, but I plan on reading it someday. We'll see.
Awesome.
We'll see what I actually learned from it. But anyways, again, bookshelf.so, MRE Black Ice, or Knickers19. Give it a follow and make your own. We'd love to see what other people are reading as well.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But I think that's good enough for tonight.
Yeah.
We'll wrap her up. You're gonna play the intro. You got this, Nick, and then we'll
go. Did you want to give? I think it's time for a few words of wisdom from Emery. I've been giving the words of wisdom lately.
Does it have to be camera related?
I think it would help. It could be music related. It could
Ooh.
be book related. What else could it be related? Creativity related.
Ooh.
Or
Why are like all the things like just in my head are like general things like don't pee into the wind?
well, that's
It's just
like
good advice.
yeah. Well, that's just pretty obvious though. Like I think so. What makes up a good advice is something that's um helpful but not readily obvious. Or if it is readily obvious, it's not something that everybody does. So actually, so I think the best advice is to so when you're filming is to literally always make sure your batteries are charged.
That was like your advice you gave every time.
Yeah.
You know what?
Because it's
Here's the thing. This is actually creativity advice. You ready for it, Nick?
okay.
Always make sure your batteries are charged.
Thank you so much, Emery. Have a
You're
good night.
welcome.